if you had to put $10,000 of your brother's money, so you really want to get it right, really, really, really want to get it right, into Airbnb or CrowdStrike, but you can't be both, which one would you buy?
Oh, that's a good question. Emmet, how are we getting on?
Good morning, Mike. How are you today?
I'm great. I'm great. I got my car back from the mechanic after a week, which is always fun. But yeah, no, it's good. It's
A
good to
week?
back to have
What did
four
you do?
wheels.
Drive off a cliff? Do a Thelma and Louise?
There was nothing wrong with the car. The car was fixed after a day, but it took 6 days to go through the warranty, which was a pain in the arse. But apart from that, we're all good.
But could they not just give you back the car while they're figuring out the warranty?
No, they couldn't let it off. It was
Mm,
third party warranty. They couldn't let it off the lot without
off
getting
the
some
lot.
form of payment. So
Yeah, more than my job's worth.
yeah,
So,
pretty
well done.
much.
Welcome back
Yeah,
to the land of driving. Must be very
very
exciting.
very banal opening to this show.
Well, that's lost half our audience. Let's see how. Let's try and lose the other half in the next 5 minutes.
100%.
Yeah.
You want to kick off a little piece about profit before we start the show?
Yeah, actually, there's a really interesting thing, which is we all know that the barriers to entry for stock advice are pretty much completely gone. And a testament to that, or an example of that rather, is that there's 48.9 billion tweets related to stock investing. So there's effectively 50 billion free stock opinions on X. And there's around 500 investing newsletters on Substack, some with hundreds of thousands of subscribers. So there are millions and millions of opinions out there. There's thousands of strategies, and there are probably hundreds of zero commission brokers. And since I built my Wall Street or co-founded my Wall Street 11, 12 years ago, I've watched what were once barriers of entry erode with time, where there was Robin Hood entering the market and slamming commissions down to zero and everyone else having to follow suit, right through to the things I just said, which is Substack has some absolutely wonderful stock investors publishing their opinions and their portfolios, and all the things that once had a barrier of entry to them have been more or less eroded. So in that time, in the time since I launched my Wall Street with John all those years ago, I guess I don't think it's arrogant to say I've seen what people absolutely truly need, which is why we created profit. So, first and foremost, the only thing you need to remember with profit is that so far it has delivered an average annual return of 21.6%, which is basically from when we created it and start tracking it 16 years ago. And what this product is the result of 16 years of development. It's powered by 5 terabytes of market intelligence, which probably doesn't mean much to anyone, but our CTO told me that. It doesn't mean a whole lot to me. It means if you printed it out, you'd need an extra cartridge or two. But it only requires 5 minutes of time each month. And we are starting to ramp down our offer for loyal Stock Club listeners, where you can get 3 months of it absolutely free of charge. We've put it into a new website in preparation for its removal, the free offer, 3 months. So I just say to our listeners, grab one now. We've a limited number of spaces, and go to useprofit.com/MWS offer, my Wall Street offer. So that's useprofit.com/MWS offer. And before I move on, I want to give a big shout out to Big W Sound in LA, a guy who is known to his parents as Mark, who wrote into us during the week to pass on his thanks for the Stock Club to you and me, Mike, and also said that he's about to take a plunge into profit to see where it takes him. So, hey, Mark, good to get your message. Thank you for that. And with that, we'll move on with the show.
Yeah, nice one, Mark. Thank you for writing in. There are literally dozens of us out there, Emmett, who enjoy this show.
Scores.
Scores of people.
Scores. Does anyone use score? Scores 20, isn't it?
Scores 20, yeah.
Right. Okay.
Score
Oh no, we're probably better off saying
7
dozens.
years
Yeah,
ago.
it's safer.
Before we get into, so we got, where are we going? We're going Airbnb, we're going CrowdStrike, and then I have an elevator pitch to finish the show. But did you get a chance to see any of Musk's interview yesterday?
Is this the one where I did see an interview because there's so many of them? It's something to do with he was asked, will he be making any more political donations? Is it that one?
So pretty much, yeah. We're not going to dwell on it for too long, but he
Yeah.
was in an interview at Bloomberg, or I think it was CNBC. He
Yeah.
basically said he is 100% committed to Tesla for the next 5 years, and that he's done with political donations. Put
Yeah.
that on top of him saying he's going to take a pretty significant step back from the Doge stuff in
Mhm.
Tesla's last earnings call, and it seems he's putting a bit of distance between him and the political stuff. He's also probably looking at Tesla and realizing how much is needed from him.
Mm.
There's this whole mess with the Delaware suspending his stock options all the way back from 2018 as well. So I'm not sure. I know there will be some resolution for him because I think everyone from the Tesla shareholders, the board, they all essentially, apart from a few like activist investors in there, want to keep him there. They want to keep him happy. So there will be some resolution in the form of payment. I don't know how it'll be done. It'll probably be a lot more expensive than it was, say, when he got granted those options in 2018. That, in fairness to Elon Musk, like, it was, can you take this company from 50 billion to 650 billion? And he did that.
Hmm.
Do you know, he absolutely accomplished a very incredibly ambitious set of targets they laid out for him, and like everyone profited from it. So yeah, I think there's a lot to unwrap there, but from a Tesla shareholder's point of view, the important thing is Tesla seems to be top priority now. Tesla and SpaceX and his companies. The Doge stuff is 100% on the back burner for him. And maybe he's even lost a bit of interest in the whole thing after the initial excitement. Would that be fair to say?
I'd say it is. I mean, that he has now participated in every major office in the world. And what I mean by that, obviously not every major office in the world, but the fact that he was conjoined to President Trump for the first 100 days, and he saw the rise of the largest man. He oversaw the rise of the largest car maker in the world by market cap. Yeah, he's definitely. I mean, the guy. I don't know. Really, he can choose whatever thrill he wishes, but I do believe that Tesla, of all his babies, is the one that probably matters most to him. Apart from the fact that the lion's share of his wealth is tied up in it, it's also the skunk works for the next wave of innovations that he and they intend to deliver to the world, whether it's the Optimus robot, self-driving cars, self-driving cabs, and whatever else is backstage. So yeah, I'm not surprised. He is not a career politician. He cannot hang out there in line of sight for 4 years alongside President Trump. He's come out, he's done his bit, he supported the president. The result that he wished for happened, and he had due influence on the policy. So I'm not surprised. And I'm glad as well. Like, in fairness, he needs to go quiet. I think we're going to see now how short how short the world's memory is. We just, we always see where, well, not always, we occasionally see a company make a giant misstep or an individual make a giant misstep. And if they just keep at it and keep going, whether it's the company or the person, in no time at all, people forget about what the infraction was. And I think we're going to see that now with Trump. If he managed, I mean, say with Musk, if he manages to keep his mouth shut and get on with building Tesla into a multi-trillion-dollar business.
Yeah, I think I'd agree there. Okay, you have a bit on Airbnb's new product update. So this is kind of the
Yeah,
first major product update we've seen in Airbnb for quite a while. So what's the
it
story
is.
there?
It's an interesting company, I think, to a lot of us, because most of us in some way have participated or it touched off on Airbnb, whether we've just observed the brand and the app or stayed in multiple locations, or we've been a host or done an experience. It's one of the new American iconic brands. And for those who really watch it, they probably realize that every year there are what are known as two releases, where they have Airbnb have biannual updates, one in May, the summer release, and then one in November, which is the winter release, obviously. And it's in and these releases are just one big upgrade
Yeah.
to the experience, and rather the user experience, the product, if you will. And it's intended to improve that product for both guests and hosts, because as we all know, Airbnb has built that nearly impossibly difficult thing, which is a double-sided marketplace. So they needed to fill the room with guests and needed to fill the room with hosts and match that supply and demand, which they did. And it's all about, these releases are all about innovation and trust and usability. So Brian Chesky, the founding CEO and a great leader, as far as I can tell, uh, basically uses the release event to unveil these new features and the tools that are ultimately designed to increase revenue. I mean, they can layer up other parts to the story, about like what adds revenue is an output. When a business does something at the very, very bottom of the funnel, revenue falls out. But above it, that's where businesses concern themselves on the assumption that if all is done properly, revenue does pop out the bottom and more of it. So what you'll always see, after one of the Airbnb upgrades or biannual releases, is a redesigned app, smarter filters,
Yeah,
more
it's
experiences.
it's an accumulation of small stuff. Would that be a
It
fair
is.
statement? Usually.
Yes, it is entirely that. And every great business does that. It's not like the difference between the Apple, I mean, say the iPhone 13 and 14. Most people will go, yeah, it was an incremental upgrade on a product we're familiar with. And this is exactly what we're getting with Airbnb. So you might open the app and may or may not notice anything to the eye. It might be they've deployed AI for chatbots, or for finding the type of accommodation you want, or something else. So it might be immediately available to your to your eyes, or might take a little bit of digging. And in the past, hosts, for example, from these upgrades, benefited from improvements like dynamic pricing suggestions, calendar management, and even AI generated listing descriptions, which is useful if you're not a bard, if you don't want to go writing a nice piece of prose. So there's always been an emphasis on safety and trust through initiatives like air cover, which is their way of offering insurance for guests, and it provides booking and refund protection and so on. Okay, so last Tuesday, or Tuesday of last week, Brian Chesky took to the mic and did the latest release. And the main takeaways, well, there was two main takeaways. The
Yeah,
first was,
it was a lot more than the usual release. That's for sure.
it was, and so much so that I opened up the re-released, or the new app, after listening to the call. I only listened to the highlights, um, because I was curious. And previously, I wasn't so interested that I jumped into the app to have a look around. But the two main takeaways, the two main improvements, was the introduction of experiences, which we'll talk about.
Reintroduction.
Yeah, the reintroduction of
Yeah.
experiences, and a new offering called services, which means that travelers can not only book a place to stay, but bolt on very curated services and experiences. Everything from hair, getting your hair done, your nails done, spa experiences, massages, personal trainers, personal chefs, photographers, like you name it. And the logic is that the revamp will allow Airbnb to compete more aggressively with hotels, because hotels usually have these ancillary benefits. And Brian Chesky said that people choose hotels for their services, people choose Airbnbs for the space. Now we're giving you the best of both worlds, which shows the strategic intent of this uh, innovation or iteration on the business. But it isn't new ground for Airbnb. And as you said, it's really the reintroduction. And previously, like really it's an attempt at scaling experiences, which was paused a couple of years ago, probably post COVID, to double down on improving their core offering, the thing they're
Yeah.
most
Yeah.
known for, which is the homestay. So you go into Airbnb, and principally the happy path, as it's known in the industry, is they want to bring you to a very nice property where you pay to stay for a couple of nights. That's the happy path for Airbnb. And those other side paths are what we're now starting to rediscover, reintroduce, and for experience, for services are introducing. But what we're seeing now is a business with a stronger foundation and I believe a clearer strategic direction. And they're circling back to an idea which was out there, and I'll talk a little bit about how I experienced it, but it this time promises to be way bigger. And as I said, the decision is as much about unlocking new revenue streams as it is about reimagining how users engage with travel. So Airbnb say that there's about 1.5 billion devices accessing its platform, or at least that's what they said last year. So 1.5 billion phones, tablets, and computers went to Airbnb in some capacity last year. But most of those users, they don't say that, but they say many of them, but I'd imagine the vast majority browsed without booking. Like you
Mm.
consider Airbnb, you might use it for tips or to have a look around. But the new features that they've brought in to the latest release aims to change that by offering reasons to stay on the site longer and to convert into a paying user. Now,
And also you'd have to say it's a nod at the luxury customer as well.
yeah,
Like
yeah. Oh, it certainly
something
is.
like a private chef or a private masseuse coming over to your house, that's not
Yeah,
something you would get for trying to fit four lads into a one bed apartment or
yeah.
something in the middle of Paris. Like,
That's a fact. I mean, you're right. It's for those with a little higher discretionary income, and the scope of this delivery is actually quite expansive, and it is very complex. And they're launching services across 10 categories: personal training, makeup artists, and all that other stuff I said. And it's going to be available in 260 cities in 8 countries, which it's actually for start you go, wow, there's 260 cities in only 8 countries. When I read that I went, wow, it's a lot of cities out there. But anyway, this is a limited release, and meanwhile the experiences portfolio is going to span 19 categories across 650 cities globally. And that's whether you want to paddleboard at dawn, or paint with a local artist, or tour a vineyard, or do something very nice and curated like that. It can be arranged through the same platform as you've used to book your bed. And even though, to come back to your point, like with four guys crashing into an apartment in Paris, there's something they want to do.
yeah.
Like you and I as two Irish guys will go, yeah, they're there to drink, or they're there for the rugby. That's frank. When you said that, that's why I was like, oh, they're there for the rugby. But there's something they want to do. Spare time isn't only about going to the pub when you're 20 something. It's
Yeah.
about getting the most out of limited time in a city.
And
Um,
knowing the right direction as well. I think that's what Airbnb really benefits from, is they're collating a list for you of like,
that's
here
right.
are the unique things that this city has to offer. And like I was looking, same as you, out of curiosity, when I saw the update, I went into Biarritz and see what they had to offer, and it's
Mm,
very specific experiences that only Biarritz can offer, and it's surf lessons, and it's called pelot here. It's sport. Do you know Jai Halai?
no.
It's like handball, but they have the big long wooden handles on their hands. Have you seen that
Yes, yeah,
before?
I've seen
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
I didn't know that's
So
what it was called.
that's a Basque sport, and you can go and do a lesson there with a professional
Oh,
pelot player. Stuff like that, where it's very important to not overlook, I suppose, a tourists, and I don't want to say ignorance because it has negative connotations, but ignorance is kind of the general gist of, oh, here, you don't know anything about this. This is what this exact place has to offer. These are the kind of experiences you can go through because you are in this unique city and it's unique to this place.
yeah,
And a lot of stuff is going to be the same as well. They're going to be the walking tours, or kind of a food tour or something like that. But you really notice, like, there is it's informational in the sense of, here's what we have to offer, here's what the city has to offer, and here's a very handy list in the exact same place where you booked your accommodation, and we've all made it very easy for you instead of you having to go out and do your own research.
yeah, that's true. And it's really about if you're in Rio de Janeiro for 3 nights, certainly if you're Irish, there's a reasonable chance if you land there, there's some part of your brain that goes, this is probably the only time in my life I'm going to be in Rio. There are places you've gone to in your life where not to be fatalistic, you're kind of aware, I never thought I'd be here and I doubt I'll ever return. And there's an important, if that thought exists in your head, there's this thing, I want to unlock the best of this place. I want to make sure I've maximized my time, in your example, in Biarritz. So if I arrived in Biarritz and I was from Argentina, where it's not a typical place you travel to on a short hop, I'd want to I want to get some Biarritz into my head, into my soul, and whether it's that sport that I've already forgotten the name of, or learning how to surf down at the water, they are experiences that bring
Yeah.
that trip to life. And I've done a few of them, as I mentioned that earlier on. Like, for example, my family and I were in Italy a couple of years ago, and my wife booked this olive oil farm experience in Tuscany through Airbnb. And we were due to go back to Pisa airport, and we had like 5 hours to kill. And we met the family who are running an olive oil farm, and they walked us through the olive oil trees and then into their factory and the cold press that they used to make the olive oil. And then we sat down and tasted all the olive oils and got a lesson on olive oil. And it was absolute pleasure itself. For us, my family will always remember that experience. Well, we won't remember beautiful lunches we had unless it was something exceptional, but that fused a higher level of enjoyment from Tuscany into our minds. John Tyrrell, my co-founder, and I were down in Sydney years ago as we were exploring the legal and regulatory minefield that is doing business in Australia. As we were told at the time, when a country is born from criminality, mate, there's regulations on everything. So we too we realized Sydney is not a somewhere we just drop into. It's quite the undertaking to go there. And we booked a incredible steakhouse that, like, owners, you'd want to be royalty to afford to dine there, but we got it through Airbnb. We dined in the kitchen. The chef was like cooking around, one of these in kitchen dining experiences. It used to be a former bank, this restaurant, and it was an absolutely magnificent experience, evident by the fact that I remember it. I can tell you here, I've walked alpacas in Kerry, which is not your traditional Southwest Ireland kind of thing to do. But like, these are all Airbnb experiences I had.
Yeah.
But what Airbnb needed to do was bring more pizzazz to these
So
experiences.
this is what I was saying. The experiences aren't necessarily new.
No,
They've obviously refocused on them and brought them back and kind of put in more effort into them compared to what they used to be. But the services is a new thing. And this is
yeah,
really the innovation, I suppose. We kind of always expected to see something like experiences come back after they axed it. And
this is true.
with
Yeah.
with services, it's a new, unique offering from the company, something that was a bit out there that people weren't really expecting. And I'm just curious because I've seen some criticisms of it too.
Mm,
I'm curious of your opinion of how you feel it will elevate the platform and the long term potential of it.
yeah.
Because I definitely see the point Chesky is making of, yes, this is to elevate us to the same level of hotels for certain offers. We have much better locations. We have way more than a hotel can offer for a lot of luxury stuff. But
Mm.
people who travel and get very used to certain perks are missing them with an Airbnb. So this is us leveling up in a sense.
And that you're there, and that level up, the name they've actually given it is Airbnb Originals. So what they're bringing to their platform isn't just a list of, like, a walking tour of Dublin or a haunted tour of Edinburgh, or walking a micro pig in a forest with red wellies or whatever, like things that you could just hop onto the internet and find elsewhere. They're looking for Airbnb original experiences, hence the name. And these are truly unique things, which probably ties back to your point about they're not for your everyday traveler. You'd need to have a little bit of disposable income. Like, for example, one of the examples they've given is beach volleyball with Olympian Carolina Solberg on Rio's Leblon Beach, or a poetry or pastry masterclass in Paris with a famous chef. So they aren't your standard guided walking tours. These are really
Yeah.
unique, bespoke, different. So if you're in that example, you're in Paris with your mates and you've done a couple of things that are fun, like this is where you really want to get that elevated in real life experience of a place. So these originals are reinforcing Airbnb's strategy of unique stays and unique experiences. But beyond the curtain, Mike, there's also a practical rationale. Airbnb is now completely is now competing, I mean, say directly with a slew of travel and activity platforms. There's loads of them. TripAdvisor, Booking.com, Get Your Guide. I think most people, when they're going to a place. Well, I suspect the user behavior is you'll have Airbnb and Booking.com open beside each other, not just for price comparisons, but for venue and places to stay comparisons. So they really need to up their game with respect to being better than the others, whatever better might mean. So it isn't really aggregating anymore. What Airbnb doing is it's curating. So hosts are offering services. Hosts who offer services will need to go through a verification and quality check, which is all about the credentials and licenses and online
Yeah.
presence. So when you book a thing with Airbnb, an
Book
experience with Airbnb.
private chef and the fella burns the toast, like it's not really going to happen. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, exactly. So it isn't the gig economy gone wild. It isn't if you want to do it, you can do it. You really do need to pass the Airbnb litmus test and checks, which I guess will build trust in the Airbnb brand. And actually, as I think it, there's loads of examples coming to my mind where we booked experiences beyond walking alpacas and curry. We baked those pastela de nata, is that what they're called, in
yeah, yeah,
Lisbon, in a family home. We learned how to make soda bread with an Irish family in Kerry, and and these are lovely things. And when you trust the Airbnb brand, they are making sure that that experience is up there. Actually, this sounds like we've been paid to do a big advert for Airbnb, which we absolutely have not. What matters to us is the business model, and
yeah,
from the business model perspective, the maths really look sensible. Airbnb takes 15% commission on the services and 20%, which is quite a chunk, from the experiences. But end users, those of us who go into the app and book it, just see one flat price. All that is dealt with behind the curtain. And this kind of clean pricing model is, obviously helps them preserve this minimalist UX user experience that they're known for. And it just makes experiences far more accessible to both sides and more appealing to both sides. But supporting all of this is the Airbnb and app, the upgrade to the app. So when we see an app upgraded, and certainly my lived experience having built my Wall Street, is once you've put something out on front, the amount of energy and work that's gone behind the scenes is huge. And users now are seeing basically three categories when they open the new Airbnb app, which are stays, services, and experiences. And if they've already booked accommodation, the app will obviously surface like really relevant add-ons automatically, and hosts are also getting this upgraded interface, and so on. But what I would say just before I shut up about it all, because really what we want to know is, to stock investors, is this moving Airbnb in the right direction? Is it going to become a bigger, better, stronger, more differentiated, and more profitable business as a result of this and previous releases? And I believe the answer is very much yes. Like there's a whole, like, every time you make an improvement, something in this world, in the digital world, you very quickly know the voting public will show you what they appreciate through its use. When we developed the My Wall Street app, our developers were disinterested, I would even go as far to say, is in what our customers said rather than what they did. Now, we took an interest in both as it happens. But what we're looking at now with Airbnb is a business where they immediately know, or almost immediately know, um, whether or not this full stack travel experience is going to cut it. So they're not just selling you a trip anymore. They are moving deeper and deeper into this full own, from the minute you get off a plane to reboard a plane, if that's how you arrived, and if that's, they want to own that time in your mind, your local guide, your local fixer, even your social circle. They're moving towards a social circle within the app. And as you know, yesterday I wrote for Eyes on the Horizon, which is a Horizon service, subservice for members of Horizon, that it's very early to speculate on the potential for each of these new subdivisions. But as of right now, I'm a little bit underwhelmed. But for the opportunities at Airbnb's disposal, I feel like more time tested product updates like an ad platform might have been more beneficial in the short term. But these releases, they come thick and fast every 6 months. I mean, that's nothing. It's a blink of the eye. So what I think of today's update doesn't really take into account the 10-year picture. And there's no question or doubt that Brian Chesky has a 10, 20, 50, and possibly longer than he's going to live vision of where Airbnb needs to go. So we can safely assume that this is just moving the nose of the ship in that direction. And I think it is a wonderful business. And execution so far appears quite measured. Like, for example, limiting the rollout 260 cities for services and 650 or whatever it is for experiences. It really allows them to test, refine, scale what works. And I think what's really interesting is how the changes are subtly changing Airbnb's identity. When you've bought into a brand, you've bought in for a specific set of reasons and things you value, and you don't want it to flip overnight. You know, we in previous podcasts spoke about businesses that utterly pivoted overnight, and it's never, well, sometimes it's necessary for survival, but it's never a great thing. Airbnb is no longer just a tech company for room rentals. It's a global consumer platform with hospitality at its core. And for us investors, I think this diversification opens up new revenue verticals with relatively low marginal costs. And for users, it simplifies a pretty fragmented world for planning a trip when you're away. So if the bottom line question is, would I buy and hold Airbnb forever? The answer is, you better believe I would, and I have. And I think it's a business that just will continue to modestly impress. But look, Coca-Cola is known to every person in the developed world because that's all they did. They stuck with the knitting and improved the product and rolled it out a little further and better.
Yeah. I tend to agree, just in the sense of the revenue opportunities, making it a bit more friendly to the luxury consumer, and in general, just facilitating a bit more spend on the platform, which was something they didn't have for a long time. So
yeah,
it's not groundbreaking stuff, but it is. That's what you said. It's marginal improvements, and I think that's what Airbnb is all about.
I think I think what it's got, we'll move on now, but what I do think is, if you're in a city, it will eventually dawn on most people, oh, I'll hop into Airbnb and see what I can do. Because, you know, people look for what to do. I'll go down, I'll look at the Little Mermaid, and I'll go up and look at the Lego factory, and then I'll go to the Tivoli Gardens. And then you've done check. And you're like, well, what will I do now? And that's possibly when they're going to just get a huge slew of mind share.
Yeah, there definitely could be that repository of activities that are unique to each city.
Yep.
Okay, we're moving on then to CrowdStrike. So this, I don't know, this story didn't get a lot of traction.
Yeah.
And there's a fair bit of speculation from me on this, but I wasn't really enthused as a person who followed CrowdStrike hearing about it. So basically, Bloomberg posted a story on CrowdStrike CEO George Kurtz, and he's made the odd move to dilute his control over the company, essentially. So he's still CEO, obviously, but he's gifted away a significant portion of his stock holdings to trusts and other philanthropic endeavors he has. But that means that he slashed his voting power from 31% in 2022 to just 2.5% today. it's a strange one. And I said we can only really speculate on his motives, but I wonder, am I making a mountain out of a molehill here? He's basically moved in the exact opposite direction of every other founder CEO. Do you know what I mean?
Mm,
With the whole
mm,
dual voting structure and the founder share, and this kind of highfalutin messing around to make sure founders keep control over a company. Kurtz is doing the opposite.
mm.
He's actually, so there was a dual voting structure in CrowdStrike previously, where Kurtz would own these Class A shares that had 10 votes to every Class B shares one. Because he's given away so much of his shares, he's actually basically rendered that useless. And so that doesn't exist anymore at CrowdStrike. And like, if you're comparing that to, say, Facebook with Mark Zuckerberg, he famously has always controlled too much of the company in a lot of investors' eyes. Obviously, harken back to 2022 and the whole the metaverse thing, changing the name to Meta. It's a very obvious example. Um, and so there are, I guess you could see positives of a CEO not having full control. But for Kurtz specifically, he's always struck me as a very level-headed
Yeah,
CEO,
yeah,
thought leader in the industry, and someone I'd be quite happy to trust my money with as a shareholder.
yeah,
Him being able to dictate a long-term vision for CrowdStrike and be able to operate the business towards that in such a manner, it was always a big plus. Now maybe that's become endangered somewhat, and then where your mind immediately jumps, and the elephant in the room is this part of some prolonged exit strategy? Do you know what I mean? To
hmm,
see a CEO give up essentially 31% to 2.5% control. I know he still controls 2.5% of $110 billion company, but to see such a move, it does strike me as someone who maybe has a foot out the door.
yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, it was untypical, and certainly what we've learned from academic studies and books and just studying the stock market is that an insider, passionate founding CEO who's a visionary is very often the key ingredient for a business becoming a mega brand. And if you think of the 10 biggest companies in the world that you can think of, a listener can think of, you can probably name the person who oversaw the giant vision. And I won't even see that. You just think about the giant companies of the world, and you'll name the person who got them there. And so it's not only proven academically, but practically, you see the most successful
Yeah.
businesses have a person at the helm who's relentless in the pursuit of a world-changing vision.
Yeah. And what has empowered them is usually that they are either a founder, or I know Elon Musk doesn't count as a founder, but he is kind of acted in such a way,
Mm,
and the control they've wrested over the company means that they can do exactly what they want, and
yeah.
they aren't dictated by other shareholders, by a board of directors. Like, their power is very much focused on one person.
Yeah, that's right.
And like,
Well,
we also just look at the success stories. Obviously, there
correct.
is the
Yeah.
other end of this as well.
Yeah, that's right. Well, you're right. It's a funny one to put commentary around because there's other things that are practical, like you only live once, and George Kurtz is probably at a possibly thinking, well, I need to do estate planning while I'm of sound mind and body, and I have vast amounts of wealth that I need to appropriate into other things, buy a country, buy an island, might buy a planet. Like, there is definitely you can understand why estate planning is is a catalyst for something like this. But honestly, I remember Bill Gates may said something, and I'm going to butcher it because I don't have an exact quote, but he said that when you make your first fortune, or when you first make a fortune, there's a rush of achievement, and you retire all of your financial worries and all of the financial worries of those you care for. And then you move into buying stuff, big things that you never thought you could afford, whether it's a 50,000 square foot house built into a cliff or a state of the art boat. But he said there comes a point where you're queuing for a burger or lining up for a burger, and you realize, I'm going to get the same burger as the guy in front of me and behind me. And in other words, there's only so much you can do with wealth. You
Yeah.
you can get to a point where it really doesn't matter. Does Elon Musk care if he's worth an extra billion or 10 billion or
No,
100 billion?
100%. He didn't care at all. He bought Twitter so people would think he was funny. Like, do you know what I mean? So and this goes with Kurtz as well. I think he's estimated about $3.5 billion net worth.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but the thing with Kurtz is that he's got this really passionate other interest in these racing car efforts. So I think it's Le Mans, the 24-hour race. He's
Yeah.
really involved with that. And I just wonder when you see someone like that who clearly has a passion beyond the business, because if you listen to Mike Zuckerberg talk for more than 5 minutes, he's clearly obsessed with Facebook.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It seems like it's the only thing he thinks about,
Oh, I
and
bet it
and
is.
and and that goes with Elon Musk and his SpaceX and Tesla. I don't know,
Yeah.
flipping politics and all the rest, but
Yes.
but they are, as a whole, I would say founders are clearly like completely driven on one thing,
Hmm.
and maybe Kurtz is just being like, what you said. I have all the money in the world. He's not financially motivated to grind as a top CEO anymore because he's been running CrowdStrike since 2011. But before that, he was CTO at McAfee. And
Mm.
before McAfee, he founded a business, I think in 1999, that McAfee bought. That's how he ended up in the company. So he's been flat out for almost 30 years. Maybe he wants to just take a step back. Maybe, I don't know, become chairman of the board and
Yeah.
just race cars instead. Like, because it's been a stressful year for CrowdStrike.
It has. Yeah. It has. Certainly
since
has. But
since the outage last summer.
yeah.
And do you remember as well? This was a little bit of, maybe it's an inkling. Maybe I think I am adding two and two and getting 12 here. But do you remember he didn't go to the congressional hearing on the
Yeah.
outage either? He
Yeah.
sent another exec.
Yeah.
And there's just small things adding up that strike me as maybe he has one eye on the door. There's a probe from, I think it's from the SEC and the Justice Department, about a recent deal
Mm.
CrowdStrike did with Carasoft Technology. Uh, I don't know. So basically, they're looking into whether Carasoft, they were supplying cybersecurity software to the IRS, and there's some dodgy dealings or something from Carasoft. So that's probably rankling with him. He just announced layoffs inspired by AI, and he's got a load of bad stick for
Mm.
that. I'm wondering
Mm.
if he's
Mm.
just a bit less bothered by everything and wants to go drive fast cars around instead.
Fundamentally, when you have aggregated a degree of wealth, and he's certainly aggregated a degree of wealth, you presume that that wealth is parked in an asset that the owner believes will grow the most or preserve capital the most. So he has, you say, 3 billion ish worth of CrowdStrike stock. What the number one concern is, why are you selling something that we out here on the other side believe is going to grow one,
In
two,
fairness, he's
three?
not selling; he's giving it away.
Oh, that's true. Sorry, you're absolutely right. That is correct. So there is, like, I mean, that is, it is a good thing to do. It's an altruistic thing to do if that's the way it's pointed. But I'm less concerned about it. But I do know it's untypical. There
Yeah,
could be this kind of like he is going. His so far we've no evidence that he's not going to participate in the direction of the business. He obviously has taken a judgment on those who are left to vote. I don't think he'd abandon his voting power if he didn't believe that those who have the majority vote already won't do right by the business. That's probably sure. But can he impose as much of his vision with or without that shareholding? I don't know.
yeah, yeah. No, yeah. I think that's just the thing. I saw the story, and I'm surprised I didn't see it get aggregated more and more speculation around it, because it was just one little piece from Bloomberg,
Yeah.
and that's where the book stopped. And I just thought, for CrowdStrike, with the CEO who's so influential in cybersecurity and is seen as one of the chief, if not the chief authority figure, he's the one that, like, if
Mm.
there's a big cybersecurity event, he's the one that's on the front of CNBC he's the one that people want to talk to.
Mm.
I do feel a company, even though the company has grown to such an extent that maybe the influence of a founder is less prominent, I do feel if he steps down as from the CEO, it would affect the investment thesis slightly. No, that's that's a big kind of speculation there, but there's some evidence to support it anyway. So yeah, I just thought that was a story worth mentioning.
Mike, I'm going to tell you something. I'm actually connected to him via email. We've exchanged emails in the past. I'm going to email him and ask him what's going on. Sure, why
Yeah,
not? Basically, can
I'm
you
sure.
ignore me?
I'm sure he'll tell you exactly. Yeah, I'm going to retire in 6 months, but
Yeah, I
don't.
bought a planet. I was like, oh, I said that on my podcast. No, you didn't. I swear I did listen to it. No, no, you're going to record it now. No, no, no,
Yeah.
please. I swear.
So yeah, that was CrowdStrike. Okay, and where are we going next? Oh yeah, I have an elevator pitch.
Pitch.
Evan,
What should we buy?
pitch.
Hey, come here. Before you move on to your pitch, a little pop quiz. If you had to put $10,000 of your brother's money, so you really want to get it right, really, really, really want to get it right, into Airbnb or CrowdStrike, but you can't be both, which one would you buy?
Oh, that's a good question. Uh, I just think CrowdStrike is prohibitively expensive at the minute, but it's always been expensive and it's
Mm-hmm.
proven to be a high quality business. I think long term, I think I would prefer to be in CrowdStrike over Airbnb, but entry points matter as well. I'd like to go back to when I thought about investing in CrowdStrike right after the outage last August
You
and
can't say that
didn't.
to your brother. Like your brother is going to meet you for
Well,
lunch. All right, what did we buy? Right, so you have to just.
my brother doesn't exist, so
Oh yeah. Well,
I
neither does
feel
mine.
less bad
So
about investing his money.
a hypothetical person. So who you care for? So tell me, there's no time machine. We got to just. It's like at market open, you got to buy 10 grand's worth, and I'm not going to get it back for another 10 years. Which would you buy?
Yeah, I think CrowdStrike, 10 years time. Yeah,
Mm. Same. CrowdStrike. Even though we're left uncomfortable, or at least somewhat a little bit confused, a little bit uncomfortable and somewhat confused, or with what George is doing, you can still rationalize it and go, look, he still has 2.5% of a business that he built from the ground up, and has a life and plans that we can acknowledge need to be executed. So I think the market opportunity. It's not. I think we all know the market opportunity for cybersecurity is doubling every, what is it, 16 months. So yeah, I'd probably go with CrowdStrike.
yeah. Okay.
Now pitch us
Um,
something. What should we buy, Mike?
yeah, so this was a company I came across for charging and fearless, and I feel like we've seen a lot of success within these niche Swedish biotechs in the
Mm-hmm.
past. I'm thinking of Cameras, Bone Support, high quality businesses from low market cap bases have grown quite rapidly. We've seen that with Nexus.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like this one could be another to add to the list. And the company's called Research Laboratories. The ticker symbol is Ray-B. Trades on the Stockholm Stock Exchange, and it's a Swedish biotech company that develops software used to facilitate radiation therapy for cancer patients. So its flagship product, RayStation, is essentially a comprehensive cancer treatment planning system. And it's used by cancer centers. It's used by over 1,100 cancer centers around the world.
Mm.
And it's seen some incredibly rapid growth. So in its most recent quarter, it saw 72% growth in order intake, 29% revenue growth, and 63% growth in operating profit. In the space of a year, it actually doubled its operating margin from, not doubled, it went from 16% to 29% at the start of this year. It's also got 2 billion in Swedish krona of an order backlog, which is, I think it took in about less than half of that last year, which
Wow.
shows just how much orders it already has on deck signed up. They're expected to generate revenue over the next 4 years. So the company has kind of those transparent, guaranteed sales to form the kind of foundation of its growth story. And then on top of rapidly growing new business that it's taking in hand over fist as well. Stock's been on a serious run up. It's up almost 300% since the start of 2024. So unfortunately, this would be a lot more beneficial elevator pitch if I caught this a year ago. It's actually been on such a good run that the CEO, it's funny we're talking about CEOs again selling stock. CEO founder Johan Loff, he sold a big chunk of his stake in the most recent quarter. It was about 6% of outstanding shares. So CEOs can sell for a lot of reasons and they're entitled to do so. Obviously, they buy for one. We always say that. But maybe he saw the run up, he saw the valuation get a bit stretched. It might be a little too hot to handle right now. But it's an interesting little wrinkle on top of all of this.
Yeah, and
Also,
it's regrettable. It's a real pity, but you're dead right. CEOs sell for a number of reasons, and one of those many reasons is that there's been, for very, very many CEOs, even for multi-billion-dollar CEOs, they never had a chance to take money off the table. Very often, they
exactly.
still live in the same house that they lived in when they started the business, and now on paper they're seeing this giant number, and they're like, "I should be living a better life than the one I've got." So there's, I forgive sells, but it's not. It's just a pity because I loved everything you said until you start talking about 300% up and your man is sold.
Yeah, yeah. So very interesting business. Obviously, there is a lot of momentum there at the minute. I mean, going from what $300 million stock to $1.2 billion in the space of a year and a half is pretty breakneck speed. But it's coming from a very low base, and that's where an awful lot of the rapid growth happens. So yeah, and it's in a right area in terms of innovating not an archaic process, but a process that needs to be updated and modernized in such a way. So
Mm.
that's Research Labs, RAY, and then capital S Search Laboratories, Ray
Now,
B on the Stockholm Stock Exchange.
hold the door. So that non-brother of yours says, "Oh, actually, bring research in." So CrowdStrike, Airbnb, and research. Which one would you throw 10K into?
I mean, yeah, if you're taking a punt, my imaginary brother, he's fairly risk prone. I'll say he'll like
Mm.
a little flutter. So let's go for the $1 billion company instead of the $200
Mm.
billion companies. There's
Mm.
there's a lot more appetite for growth there, or
Yeah,
room to grow into.
yeah. And again, back to that founding CEO visionary, they almost always sell a chunk when the sales are up and the business is flying. They need to do some estate planning. So whether it was Michael Dell or Steve Jobs or all the famous names we know in the earlier days of the business before they turned into trillion-dollar businesses, they took some money off the table. And sure, had they just left it alone, they'd be worth even more. But it's this kind of, you've between 8 and 9 decades to do the best you can to enjoy life if you're lucky.
100%. If if
So when you're
if for
50 or something, you're like, well, okay, right, I'm definitely more than halfway through my life. I may as well do something with it, with the
Yeah.
wealth, I mean.
Oh yeah, 100% sure. If Warren Buffett didn't convince Bill Gates to diversify his Microsoft shares, I think he'd be worth 600 billion quid or something right now.
Oh, for crying out loud.
Poor old Bill
Yeah, but
Gates.
does Warren Buffett ever do anything right?
Yeah. All right, that's it for today's show. Remember, we still have the offer for profit. So it's useprofit.com and it's 3 months completely free for my Wall Street listeners. So just go on to useprofit.com/my Wall Street
No, it's
MWS offers.
MWS offer. MWS
Yeah,
offer. God, you have a lot to remember, folks. But profit is spelled as
it'll
in
be the
pure.
link. The link instead of us spelling out instead of spelling out URLs, the link is going to be in the show notes for this episode and will be in the recap email as well. So if you're part of either of those, you will see the 3 month offer is still live for our listeners.
Sure, just go in and
Okay.
look at it. Sign up and go in and look at it at least for 3 months and go, yeah, that works, or otherwise, but it does work. So go
Yeah.
in and have a look at it.
Literally cost you nothing.
Yeah.
Okay, on that, Emmet, thank you for joining me and thank you everyone for listening. We'll talk to you next week.